Hello, this is Tolga again. This evening, we have a guest, traveler and tourism experts, and director of Trips It Asia company. Here is Ron Oren.
Hi. Thank
Good
you,
evening.
Tolga. Good evening. Thank you for having me. Great being here.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
And Ron, could you introduce yourself a little bit and briefly?
Right. So probably at the late 90s, I left my home on a trip. I didn't quite know where it's going to take me, but here I am, 22 years later, in Mongolia. I live here for the last probably slightly more than 20 years. Deal with travel and enjoying my life.
Well, over 20 years, that's a very interesting. So, lots of people would think you will be very good at Mongolian language. How's your Mongolian language?
Yeah, nothing to brag about. I probably could understand quite a bit. Not very good at expressing myself, but my wife says that I have enough Mongolian to find my way back home and probably to get a snack on the way.
All right, so very good luck with this.
Yeah.
Right, now the question about the destinations tonight. So we'll be talking about the destinations. So coming to that point, we will be covering interesting topic called bucket list.
Right.
So when you're thinking of bucket list,
Hmm.
so it's like everyone has to have one,
Right.
the big list, whether it's short, long, it's got to be there.
Yeah.
So how does it work? How is it coming from? Beside the bucket list, so where did you want to travel the most when you were a teenager?
Wow. I come from a family of travelers. We've been traveling ever since. As a baby, I remember myself being crawled, being dragged around in the desert, on the mountains, hiking, trekking, camping, you name it. So I kind of grew into it. Yeah, actually, my parents met on a plane. My mother was a flight attendant, and my father was a security guy on the plane. So that's where they met. So I think that's pretty much drawn my destiny, of flying around, traveling around. I knew I would want to travel to Asia. Somehow I was always attracted to the culture, to the history. I didn't know much about it, but I wanted to go and explore it. And I guess that's what I'm doing for the last 20 years.
Right, so you are so much attached to tourism since when you were young. Well, is it everyone has been like that, or is it just only you? Or?
No, I think it's first of all part of a culture. Back in Israel, a lot of people travel. It's just part of everything. Whether it's a small country, you can hop onto your car and drive. North, south, do a day hike, go back home. Camping is very popular. Traveling is big in Israel. Both in country and abroad. So, yeah, I think it's something of a culture, but also in our home, it was always part of what we did all the time.
Well, it's interesting to me. Since when you started traveling? I mean, back in Israel. So it's just you said there's a travel culture there.
Well, as I told you, with my family, I traveled all along. But I think my first big trip was when I was 15, 16. Me and a friend just got ourselves huge backpacks. Don't even know what we put there, and hitchhiked around Israel for 2 weeks. Didn't quite know where we go. Wherever we were able to catch a ride, we went there. By the time it was off, we saw where we are, found a place to pitch a tent, and yeah. So I think that was my first big adventure. Yeah.
So you're thinking about, you are a big traveling soul and no need to afraid of anything. Is that how you felt?
Yeah. This is pretty much how I live my life until now. So yeah, you know me.
Okay. The next question.
Right.
So the destinations. So there are so many categories of to have destinations. Top destinations. You name it, and it's like but in general, there are some hot destinations.
Right.
So, what do you think the top destinations all over the world?
Wow. First of all, there's a list, and I see a lot of places on the hot list that I wouldn't go. But I think France is number one in the world. I think the US is number two. Don't quite remember the numbers. Here in Asia, I think it's Thailand, China, Vietnam, the three biggest destinations. I guess I probably in South America. I wouldn't know. I live in Asia. I dream Asia. This is where I'm focused. So this is.
Well, there's one statistics.
Right.
I could tell you. Well, where in the world? I googled it. So basically, I found out the big destinations all over the world. So it said, hang on, this is divided by continent.
Right.
So if you look at when you're thinking of Africa, will be really good destinations, but Africa is in the bottom.
The bottom, right?
In the bottom.
Yeah.
So it said 53.8 million rivals in all over Africa.
Right.
So I think it's pretty much low, but it's been so much advertised anyway.
Right.
But
actually, sorry, I think that only in China there are 60 million coming every year, more than Africa.
Now increasing so much in the last 2 years. Without the Corona period, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So working, leisure, I think there's so much of coming from China only. Yeah.
Right.
I agree with you. Well, then it's Middle East, the second bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So it says 56 million rivals. Mm-hmm. So then the Asia and Pacific, so there's 280 million rivals per year. Then America, of course, North America and South America. This is about 193 million arrivals. Then in Europe is the top.
Right.
It says 608 million arrivals.
Right.
Only to Europe.
Yeah.
Seems everyone's traveling to Europe.
Yeah, but I think that part of it, and I think you talked about it with Tom on your last podcast.
Sure, the previous podcast. Yeah.
That Europeans travel within Europe. So Belgium that goes into France counted as an arrival. It's not necessarily people that coming from outside.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
it's easier for them just jump hop into the car and drive across the border, and that would be counted as arrival. So yeah.
Yes, I was thinking about because of Europe has the maximum number. And it seems it's so much developed within Europe.
Right.
So that's why so much traffic in there. So together is 1.7 billion arrivals all over the world. Right. So which is quite a high number.
Yeah.
And behind that number, there's quite a lot of economy is going for sure. Right. Then the next question: if I were a traveler, how would you? If you were a traveler, how would you choose the destination?
With me, usually it starts with something I see on TV. Either National Geographic or some news speech or something that just attracts my attention and say, hey, let's see where it is. Let's see how you get there, how difficult it is to get there. So it's usually there must be a theme, something I'm looking for, either wildlife or something with culture or history or some special building. So usually I build my trip around a theme or around one thing I want to see, and then glue to it different pieces into a trip. So that's usually what moves me.
Right. Ron, could you tell me what makes the destination to be as a hot destination? So, is it the unique culture?
First of all, I think there are trends. Definitely, within a market. For example, the English going. They have a specific trend. There are trends for Israelis, there are trends for Mongolians, Sometimes all the Mongolians go to Vietnam or all go to Hainan or so, and you see it all over. It's very, you have few people going, taking nice photos, coming back with good stories, and then it becomes a trend. So I think that's part of it. I think that another part of it is how attractive the destination is in terms of cost, in terms of how easy to travel there. Safety is a huge thing. So all these makes getting to a destination, traveling through a destination easier. But I really think, trends has a lot to do with it. Yeah.
I've heard this of the French. They love it. Once, the stream, it's like a stream. Once they love the place, they wouldn't stop for 20 years. It's like, traveling to Thailand.
Right.
Then they would never stop traveling there. It's like now over more than 20 years, but still travels and there.
Yeah.
So it's like, does it apply to any other countries? Like,
first of all, I think Thailand is a very good example. My parents traveled in Thailand in 1978. And ever since, Thailand was a very welcoming country. You get a visa on arrival. There are plenty of flights, relatively cheap. There are all sorts of accommodation, from simple guest houses all the way to luxurious hotels. It's easy to travel around. It's safe to travel around. So probably from the 80s, Thailand has targeted, travelers and have set a goal to make tourism one of its main incomes. So I think this is what makes Thailand a hot destination for 40 years now.
Exactly. It's over 30, 40 years now, yes. And still
Right.
is, actually.
And I think, if you look at China, for example, that was totally closed until probably 90s, was still difficult to get there. Probably they started to ease the restrictions at the beginning of the millennium. And they actually boosted it all around the Olympic Games. Actually, in 2000, they won the bid for the Olympic Games, and that's when they started to open their gates. So you can see the processes, how it's going over there, and you can compare it to what Thailand have done 40 years ago. You can see Vietnam tagging along over there, and Vietnam bringing up Cambodia. Laos is growing slowly. So I think there are certain things that you can put your finger on, certain factors that makes a destination a hot destination.
Right, yes. The example of China, well, they were opening back in 2000s. It's just really, really, I think they really managed to open it to the world.
Right.
Lovely, actually. So when I wasn't down in South China, some of the islands were there. So they were offering pretty much of the activities there in Thailand. So thinking about, this is cheaper in here, but you can see that the activities and accommodations is quite similar to Thailand's. It's just, they really looks like, copying, more or less. This is like a copying whole Thailand's ideas there. But it seems the local travelers, they are flooding in, the bus by bus. Hundreds and hundreds of people were visiting every hour. So I think it's a huge migration was happening in there.
Right.
So now it's like, Mongolia. We'll talk about Mongolia. Is Mongolia hot listed country? Is it hot destination country?
I think it depends how you measure it. I think that I definitely think Mongolia is extremely interesting. I think it's an amazing place to travel at. It's very different. It's different than many other destinations in the fact that it doesn't have huge highlights. You don't have the Great Wall of China, and we don't have the Grand Canyon, and we don't have the Niagara Falls, or the Colosseum in Rome, or so in terms of actual visual attractions, it's a little bit difficult to market Mongolia, I guess. But on the other hand, we have here a very unique nomadic culture. We have vast open spaces that very few countries can offer. driving 3 days without seeing an electric pole or without seeing anybody, actually, which really appeals to a lot of people. So I think Mongolia is super interesting, and I think it's gaining reputation over time. Again, I think that also tourism in Mongolia is 20, 25 years old, if you don't look at the old times, but it's not longer than 20 years that people traveling here. So it's still developing, and I can understand why it's on one hand difficult to market, but anyone that travels here, is just so amazed with the country. So I think it's making its way up to the hot destinations list.
Yes, I looked at the internet, and there are some of web pages they mentioning Mongolia to be one of their hot destinations. But if you just Google it, so I'll look what I have found. It said, I just Googled, is Mongolia hot destinations to travel? It said, the suggestions came up. It said, is Mongolia a dangerous country?
Right.
And the next question came up, what is Mongolia best known for?
Mm-hmm.
The next question was, what is the tourism like in Mongolia? Is Mongolia beautiful? Is Mongolia poor or rich country? How expensive in Mongolia? So it seems these questions are mainly like people don't know Mongolia at all.
Right.
So maybe, the Mongolia itself is a destination for, pure eco image. But will you agree with this?
I think that what you just these questions that you just quoted are very good. They really show how little people know of Mongolia, which is fine. It is what it is. In the end of the day, it is a small country, Mongolia, and being neighboring Russia and China and all these huge countries, so it's probably less noticed, which is fine. But whoever decides to come to Mongolia, and I think this is interesting because most of the people that I see coming here to Mongolia are people that already travel the world. It's farther down the list. They've been to if I talk about Asia, they've been to Japan, they've been to China, they've been to Vietnam, maybe they've been to Korea, and Mongolia is when you're starting to run out of other destinations, you start to look deeper and to look for the things that are less obvious. And I think this is the beauty of Mongolia. We wouldn't want to get here 60 million tourists a year, right? Like China.
Exactly.
I think that Russia is somewhere around 15 million tourists a year or 10 million tourists a year. We wouldn't want all these, right? We can't accommodate them. I think that part of the beauty here is that you go to anywhere in the country and you don't see other tourists. It's you, it's nature, it's the local nomads, it's real Mongolia, and you really get to experience Mongolia. And you go to China, to any tourism destinations, and all you see is the back of the tourist in front of you. So I think, it's an advantage in Mongolia.
Yes. If you look at it, so you are saying the Mongolia is not the top choice whether you want to travel. So the number one, Hawaii.
Right.
Number two, maybe Japan, Mount Fuji. Maybe just the long list after that.
Yeah.
Then the Mongolia, maybe it's a little bit.
But I think it's fine, I think, we Mongolia, we can't compete with not with the Japanese culture and Japanese food, and not with I don't know what. Well, there are plenty of examples, but
Yeah.
We can't, and we shouldn't, which is fine. There are enough people that travel the world, been everywhere, and they're looking for the next destination, and then we should pop in. So I think it's fair, and I think it's right.
So, looking at the destinations next to China, let's say China. So, can we compete with Chinese? because they have Inner Mongolia, so they basically they promote the Mongolia is a part of their history or culture, or they're part of tourism.
First of all, I think that within China, Inner Mongolia is pretty small, and there's not much left, in Inner Mongolia. That there are roads everywhere. There are, most of the nomads. Very few people live in a ger. I don't think we can compete with China. The amount of money they put in, the budgets they put in, the government support the travel industry gets in China is something, will be very difficult for Mongolia to match. I think what we should do is to complete a trip to China. So if you do 2 weeks in China and then you come here for 3-4 days, so I think this could work, either on the Trans-Siberian Railway or a combined trip. For example, we have in Khovdin Bulgan, there is a border crossing straight into Xinjiang. So if we would cooperate with Xinjiang and have people traveling along the Silk Road in the Chinese Xinjiang province and then crossing over through Khovdin Bulgan directly to the Western IMAGs, that can be interesting. So rather than trying to compete with countries that are so bigger, so much richer, and has so much more resources, let's see how we work together with them and complete the travel products that they're offering.
Yes, exactly. So you are telling very interesting suggestions, actually, how to work with the Chinese and Russia, maybe just, the Russia, because of a lot of people know about Lake Baikal and that region. They want to travel, or Trans-Siberia trains. So maybe we could combine with this, and then we could play some tricks. I mean, to play with the cards of, what we have. Right. Otherwise, it's hard to compete with these two, actually. So, what about, the activities in Mongolia you can do?
Right. I think, it's a great question because you can see in other places, like in Thailand, you go down to the island in the south of Thailand, and there are plenty of activities, right? So you can, see, what do you call it? The sea.
The beach.
Yeah.
The beach holidays.
Yeah, but they have like all these boats and forgot the name. But then
jet boats and things,
exactly. They have the jet skis and stuff, so that's down south. And then when you go up north around Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai, so you can rent a 4-wheel drive and go and visit the tribes in the mountain. In the center, you have things that are more focused on religious culture, but everywhere you go, there is activities that arrange. For example, you can take a cooking class, in a village. There is a place where you can rent a bicycle. There is a mountain guide that will take you hiking. So you get to a center of traveler center like Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai, or down in Phuket or Koh Phi Phi or whatever, and there would be agencies that are specializing in specific activity: renting motorcycle, renting cars, hiking, camping, visiting. And here in Mongolia, we're a little bit lacking it, and I think this is a challenge that comes from, first of all, very short season, and second, the relatively low number of people. So if I would open tomorrow an agency that rents out, 4-wheel drive in Hufsgul, it will be very difficult for me to ever get back the investment I put into buying the cars and maintaining the car. But in other destinations where there are travelers all year round and the numbers are much higher, so you always have enough travelers to pay and get the investment back. So I think that in this term, we're a little bit lacking in Mongolia. Like if you would go to Khinti for birding, for example, there's no one to go to. You have to go with your car. You have to find the birds. But if they would have a center for birding that you could go there, pay them for taking you for a day or two to see endemic birds to eastern Mongolia, that would be very interesting. But I just don't know if it's financially viable. So, yeah.
Well, yeah. So when you look at it, well, this is quite of downside of Mongolia, isn't it? So hard to business, the tourism business get going all year round. So if it was, I mean, can we extend it a little bit?
First of all, it is extending. I think it's extending for two reasons. First of all, global warming works a little bit for Mongolia in this case, because the shoulder season getting wider. Before, 20 years ago, back in October was way too cold to travel around. I think that over time, it's warmer earlier in the spring, and I think a little bit later in the autumn. So in this sense, and second, as Mongolia get better known, and not all the people can come exactly in June, July, and August. Some says, can we come in September, October? So with the popularity, the season also gets a bit longer. But the biggest challenge of Mongolia would be tapping into winter travel. I think that will be the game changer.
Sure. We want to talk about the winter destinations. So Mongolia, known as a cold country,
Right.
one of the cold countries. So can Mongolia be one of the winter destinations or top the winter destinations?
First of all, it should. There is no question. It must. If the travel business cannot grow from 2 to 3 months a year. 4 months, 5 months. It's just not enough. Mongolia will have to find a way to finance it. We'll have to find. But if you look at other cold destinations like Lapland, okay, people come there and they travel, in minus 20 or minus 30, because in the evening there's a nice cozy place to go to. As long as we don't have it in Mongolia, people willing to rough it out during the day if they have a nice place to stay for the evening. And for this, Mongolia would have to find how it invests money into to have the winter tourism, you have to invest infrastructure first, isn't Right.
it?
Yeah.
So to me, it's interesting. So what people are more interested in traveling more in colder the winter destinations, what they want to see.
But first of all, a lot of people want to experience something they hardly ever experience. Most of the world live in warm areas. They might have a bit of snow, but not as extreme as Mongolia. I think there's no doubt on how beautiful.
Well, let me say, for example, if you are traveling to Lapland, Norway, Sweden,
Right.
and so what do you want to see there?
Well, Lapland is it's amazing how they're selling one package. It's snowmobiles and reindeer, and that's all they have. But they keep on investing, and all you see if you search Lapland winter tourism, it's all about the hotels, because that's what they can market. Because all of them, they're all competing over the same snowmobile and the same reindeer, and then each one trying to come up with a more exclusive hotel built out of ice, or look like the North Star, or the best hotel to see the Northern Lights. And so it's all about this, because the package, the content is all the same. While in Mongolia, I think Mongolia could develop snowshoeing and snowmobile, and there's so many things you can see here in the winter and experience the life of the nomads. In the winter is amazing, and go hunting with the Kazakh eagle hunters. They're hunting only in the winter, right?
Yes. Snowshoeing. So you mean this big pad thing,
Right.
and walking on the snow?
Beautiful day hike, You and me, we like to hike, right?
Exactly.
But if I could do it in the winter, but then in the evening have a nice place to stay at, I'd go there. I'd probably drag you and.
Sure.
Yeah.
So a little bit of we go deeper in there. So how far we can go with these snow pads during the day? Well, actually, the winter is quite a short day actually.
Yeah, but that's part of it. How long can you stay out in minus 40? So you make a morning hike, come back for a warm soup and lunch, and then in the afternoon maybe go snowmobiling, and the next day maybe go cross-country ski, and another day you go to a nomadic family. So I can keep you busy for a week, you know.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, looking at these the countries, they has developed their winter tourism already. So compared with Mongolia, so it seems way too ahead. But we can catch up. We can catch up with them, especially if we put more attention to it, and also developing some of this infrastructure. So we just slowly would catch up. So would you agree with me on this?
Yeah, and you know, you keep on asking me about the competition and catching up, and I say, you know, there's enough for everybody. You know, if we put here, people would come. You know, maybe we will not be number one, or maybe we will not be number million, or maybe it doesn't matter. What I'm saying is that when you create a welcoming environment, people come, okay? And we see it, you know, as you said, no, we can't compete with China, no, we can't compete with Lapland, but it doesn't matter. You know, we have to go ahead and work as there is no competition, and people would come, you know, people love Mongolia. I know people that came here 3 and 4 and 5 times. I'm sure you have some of your travelers that came over several times, and people just in love with it. You know, they want to see different parts of the country. They even go to the same part of the country just because they enjoyed it. It's so different, and I think this is, you know, maybe going back to your what makes a country a hot destination.
Exactly.
I think that you know, in China you travel. You know, I keep on referring to China just because it's nearby, and this is, you know, I run a lot of trips out in China. But you just go from a site to site. Okay, you go from the Great Wall to the Forbidden City to this museum to the, and the beauty of traveling in Mongolia is because we don't have all these attractions. You just go there and things happen. You know, you meet people on the way. You meet locals. You meet travelers. You would never know when somebody would stop you for a bit of a sheminarech, and that's it, you know. Then you're gonna spend the rest of the day there, right, lying together with them. And so the adventure here is not just in the country itself, and not in the destination. The adventure is that you don't know how the day is gonna look like. While if you travel, you know, in Vietnam, in Cambodia, in China, in Korea, you tell me for how many days you're coming, and I can tell you pretty much how your trip is gonna look like. And here, you can do the same route 4, 5, 6 times, and every trip would look totally different. Because
why is it?
Because it's not structured. We're not running from one side to the other. You start the car, you drive. Suddenly there is a beautiful rainbow. You stop, and then a herder would come, and he would tell you, "Yeah, my house is over there," and you would go there, and they would put some bullets, and somebody would bring in a bottle of something good, and you sit and talk, and before you notice, you know, it's afternoon, and you drive to your next destination. So, and with the next time you come there, something totally different can happen on the exact same route. So I think that's a huge difference between the adventure of Mongolia rather than any other place where it's so structured. You know, you've been guiding people outside of Mongolia, and you know, just run from this activity to this activity. 10 o'clock you have to be in this museum. 12 o'clock you have to have lunch. 3 o'clock you have to have it. We don't have it in Mongolia. You wake up and you're planning on leaving 9 o'clock, and before you know it, it's 11 o'clock because you went to take some nice picture by the lake, or you met something, and just, you know, the whole perception of time is different because we don't have a structured days.
Well, it sounds so unique, actually. So when you drive in the middle of nowhere, and all of a sudden it rains, and rainbow comes out, and you stop there, and all of a sudden herder on horseback and comes to you and inviting you to get home, actually, and to have this steamed dumpling, have a little bit distilled vodka going. This is so unique. It's I think you can't get this kind of experience. Not many places.
Exactly.
Not so many places, I would say. So what about, you know, Mongolians? We think the Mongolia is so beautiful. So beautiful. It is actually, indeed. But there are so much, you know, so many beautiful places out there. The world is so big on this.
Right.
So if you want to choose, you know, this beautiful scenery destination, where would you go?
Within Mongolia?
No.
Anywhere.
All over the world. Anywhere. It can be Mongolia, actually.
Right.
But we'll come to Mongolia anyways.
Well, no doubt Mongolia is my favorite.
Sure.
That's where I chose to live, and I travel extensively. I think you make the trip. It really doesn't matter. Wherever you go, what I'm trying to say is that you can't rank what's the most beautiful, but there is no one place I went to and I didn't enjoy it, and there is no one place where I didn't want to come back, bring back my children and my family and travel with them. So a lot of time I travel by myself or with my travelers, and then I say, I wish, I would be here with my kids and with my wife. And so a lot of time it actually happens, I come back and I just grab the family and we go and travel. We try to.
Yes, I'm sure there will be a lot of places you really want to come back with your family and things. But what about the other side? So you come there, you visited there,
right.
And then you have a regret. It's not as beautiful as it is, and it's been advertised, promoted so much, but it's underrated. So is there any places you thought of?
I think probably the only one I can think of is a trip to southern China we had with the family probably 2 years ago. And it was just raining, for the whole week. And I thought, I should have looked at the weather and I should have just canceled even in the last moment, seeing the weather and something I learned from. No, I tell you, the trip is within you. If you're going to enjoy, you would enjoy anyway, If you're coming to have a good family time or good time with yourself or good time with whoever you travel with,
well,
no
I
matter
think
what.
You and we are the travelers. I mean, the travel experts. So maybe this question is too easy for you, not to make these kind of mistakes, to choose the destination.
No, but yeah, I think that for anyone, once you made a decision to go, just enjoy it. And I think it's something. I've seen people coming to Mongolia, I remember an old couple that came and didn't realize that in the ger camps, they wouldn't have toilet and showers within the ger. And the first night they got all panicked and stuff. And then they just released, they said, miscommunication, we didn't understand, we didn't read. But now we are here, let's just enjoy it, So the first night there was a bit of uncertainty. They thought maybe they would go back home, but then they just let it go. And so I think it's something, I'm just saying, you made the decision, you went all the way, just enjoy it. So, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I was thinking, not to make this kind of mistakes. Maybe you should do more homework.
Absolutely.
Homework.
Absolutely.
So just, you and I, we are the travelers. So we do a lot of search, and so we go for details.
Right.
So maybe just not lot of people do this. Maybe we should give them some advice. So how to avoid this kind of mistakes is.
I think it's a matter of personality, and I refer again to your previous chapter with Tom, and he was talking about how he enjoys to plan everything, and I think I'm the total contrary. I just go on the plane and I know everything will be fine. I don't deal too much with researching. I don't deal too much with. I just ask whoever I travel with or the company arranging for me the trip or whatever. I just tell them, what do you recommend? I want to do this and this and this. And once they tell me, I would rarely go and check things myself. But it's really a matter of personality. But I can tell you that for my travelers, when they go, to Bhutan or China or Korea, Taiwan, I have a book for them, 35 pages with everything to expect, what to eat, what kind of electricity, plugs they would have, what kind of car they would go, a little bit about the culture, the history. So I believe in giving the people the opportunity to study or to learn before they go on.
This is like a manual, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like a manual. So you have to read the page 4,
right.
The toilet.
but I do have about toilet. I do have about everything. Whether you should drink the water, what you should bring, what you shouldn't bring, what you should do and not do in the country. Etiquette of the culture. So I give the people the opportunity to study. But for me, I most of the time I don't really care because I know that I'm going to enjoy anything. So
Sure. When you choose the destination or for your holiday,
Right.
so would you go for reputation for the country, reliabilities, and what are the main reason
that I choose a
you
destination.
choose?
Again, I can tell you, I went on a crazy trip to northern Siberia 2-3 years ago, and it all started with me seeing something on the BBC. They were showing a reindeer festival where Putin flew in just to give somebody some prize or something, and
You're kidding? Is the Putin, the president of Russia,
Yeah.
visited the reindeer festival?
yeah, because what happens is this whole peninsula where they live, it's all full of oil.
Oh yes.
So he has the Gazprom or whatever, they drinking all the oil or the gas or whatever
Oil,
is there.
gas, and diamond.
Right. So he's just making sure the locals are happy. So he arranged for them a festival and he handing out prizes and stuff. And I saw this and I said, "Wow, that's crazy! I should check it out." And probably after like 3-4 months, I was on my way there. One of the craziest trips I've been to. But
That was a crazy trip. Actually,
Yeah.
it was lucky. Actually, I mean, I would say.
But again, I would see, some Buddhist ceremony in Bhutan, and I would make sure I'm there, or I would see a temple in China, or So usually, as I told you, I need a trigger and something to put the seed, and then I would plant my whole garden of trip around it.
Quite interesting. And next question: if you are as a Westerner, and if you look at a Western point of view, or Asian point of view, looking at the Mongolia, different perspectives, or how do you think of? I mean, how do you see differences?
First of all, it really. I think that in general about Western, we can say that they just don't know, which I think is fine. As I told you, with all these giants around, it's easy to be unnoticed, and maybe it's better this way. I come from Israel, a country that is way too noticed sometimes. So I think it's sometimes better be slightly off the headlines. For Asians, it's interesting. First of all, Mongolia is very much religiously related to Bhutan, to Tibet, which is places that I travel a lot. And so when people hear that I live in Mongolia, back in Bhutan, in Tibet, in Inner Mongolia, people are very excited. Actually, in Inner Mongolia, they would talk to me Mongolian, and being extremely especially 20 years ago when I started traveling in Inner Mongolia, people didn't travel that much between Mongolia and Inner Mongolia, so that was like really impressive for them to see somebody coming from Mongolia and really interested in the culture and stuff. But the Korean, I think each nation in Asia has a different perspective towards Mongolia. Some look at it as a big brother and small brother. I think Japanese, Koreans looking at Mongolia as a little brother where they come and help, Koika, Jaika, but you see it in general, and the history, of course, of Mongolia and Genghis Khan is something, that's pretty much what most Westerners would know. They would know Genghis Khan, they would know Mongol Empire, but they wouldn't know anything about it. They would know that it's the biggest in the world. They just know it as titles. So...
Yes, you have a very interesting thoughts. So what I was thinking about, going back to your what you said about Inner Mongolia. About 20 years ago, there weren't many people traveling, but once you were there, it was very warm, welcoming. Mm-hmm. So could you tell us a little bit about what happened was there? It's interesting to me.
Well, it's changing. All of China is changing. China is just crazy.
It's just you tell after 2 years when you come back in China, some region totally different.
Totally different. And what I've been, I'll go back to Inner Mongolia, but I've been probably 4 years ago in a province called Fujian down in South China, and it was probably one of the last provinces where very few tourists came. And they just, you could see how they decided, the government of Fujian has decided to make it into a tourism destination, and just wiped out whole villages. And it was funny because you could see people selling, things from the Ming Dynasty, Qing Dynasty, because the house was about to be demolished, and they would rebuild the whole village from the beginning, just very beautiful, not dirty, not all clean, with lights and very welcoming. So wherever they chose, or wherever it is close to another attraction or whatever, I don't know what's their master plan, they would come raise down a whole village, 300-400 years old, and rebuild it as a replica.
I hope not the people.
China, everything can happen, yeah. But and you could see it also in Inner Mongolia. There's in Inner Mongolia a place called we call it Badain Jaran. I think in Mongolian it would probably be Badan Jaran, I assume. I tried to trace the word. Nobody in Mongolia knew what it means.
That's not familiar.
Yeah, but it's definitely a Mongolian name. Okay, Badan Jaran. It's a desert. It has they claim the world's tallest sand dunes, and in between them there are crystal blue lakes. It's beautiful. It's amazing. And when I first got there, which is also an interesting story of how I got there, you would go there was one, 3-4 Chinese guys with Beijing jeep, like
sure, yes, I remember
this, right?
Like yes, Jaris,
like Jaris, yeah.
Thing, yeah.
And they would sit there, and you would pay them, 100 RMB a day, and they would take you around, and we would camp everywhere and stuff. And now we go there now, there's a tourism license, only people with license can go, and there's a certain routes that you can go. Back then we could go everywhere. I've still seen people with girls, nomads within this desert. You don't see them anymore. Everybody, China offers for the Mongolians, a very easy life, and they're building for them towns. They're giving them apartments for free, and I think it's what somewhat we see happening here in Mongolia, where people, just moving from the countryside to a more comfortable life here in the city. So I think we have the same process out in China. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting story. Thank you. And so we're moving on now. The Mongolia,
right?
Within the Mongolia, there are many places where you could travel. So, for example, to Gobi, when you travel to north, the Huskul Lake. When you go west, so the Alta National Park, Alta Tavernburg National Parks in the east, big plain where you could go. But for you, what is the top destinations in Mongolia inside?
Wow. You keep on asking me very difficult questions today. It's almost like asking me who I love more, my dad or my mom, right? I love going anywhere. And I told you the trip is within you, whether the scenery is beautiful or a bit boring. If you open for new adventures, you would enjoy everywhere. I would say that probably the province that I know the best is probably Arhangai. Maybe just because it's close enough to UB. I find the landscape very, varied. There are lakes and rivers and hot springs and volcanoes and, so you can see even a bit of a desert. So Arhangai, I think, has a lot. But then again, if you go out west or Tavernburg, the landscape is stunning and the Kazakh culture is interesting, and Hufsgul and Dalhat Valley and the reindeer, the Duha people, the reindeer people, and the Ringang in the east. I just love it all, Yeah.
Well, the reason I was asking, because of the people, the foreigner coming to Mongolia, they know Gobi, they know Huskul Lake, and they know this the nomadic culture, because it's been advertised, it's been promoted. So if you Google Mongolia, then the Naadam Festival come out, and the Genghis Khan in Gobi, where you want to travel. So all these very few words will come up.
Right.
So to promote. So that's why I was asking. Well, the Western point of view, Mongolia only within this frame.
I think I agree with you, and I think first of all, two things. First of all, we see more people interested now in the West. I think that lately, with Ashulpan, and it opened the whole eagle training and hunting with eagle to the West, and I think people are very interested, especially photographers. But as to what you said, you can see there is a if you take the map of Mongolia, right, you can almost in the center you can find a line of ger camps. Okay, so you can stay in a ger camp on a trip that starts down in the Landsatgard and go to Yulinam and Khongorenius and travel up into Urhangai, Arhangai, and up to Hofsgul, because that's and where the ger camps are is where people want to go. So there is one strip.
Well, it looks like a vertical line.
Like somebody would cut, the country,
I never looked at it.
So if you go east, it's pretty difficult to find ger camps. If you go west, it's pretty. But in the center, there's one line of ger camps, and they keep on coming, and they keep on developing. And you see, better ger camps, and now we have a lot of more and more ger camps with showers and toilets inside, which is great. But you don't see much development outside this. I call it the ger camp belt, right? So this really shows you where people want to go. So there is Harhorin that people know and people can relate to the Genghis Khan or the Mongol Empire history. And there is the volcano and hot spring, and the Gobi and Khufsgul, so it's all connected. Yeah.
Well, we are doing Mongolian version as well, and the Nara and Zanda, they did the Mongolian version. So they did a little bit of questionnaire about asking where the Mongolians been different provinces. So the top list was Darkhan, which is very interesting. Maybe just because of lots of people traveling to Russia or Hufsgul, then they have to travel through Darkhan nearby, at least.
I think that Darkhan, probably because it was one of the very few places where you had a asphalt road.
There you go.
Back then, so it just gained, popularity over time. So, it's an easy drive out of Ulaanbaatar, where going to the Gobi, now there is road, but 10 years ago it would be quite a trip.
Exactly, it was quite a trip. But, the bottom list is interestingly the Bayanulgi, the west, the far west is where was the least visited province. So showing, in over the summer, there will be a lot of people visiting Bayanulgi. So there's lots of people want to do this trip.
Right. I think that first of all, I have to speak about Mongolians traveling Mongolia, which is amazing, and back, when I first came here, you would see very few people traveling out in the country, hardly you would see, the locals. I can remember, back in 2000, seeing somebody by the Chulut Canyon. I remember one family, on a picnic there. You would see some in Hufsgul, mainly flying in and out, hardly ever driving. And now you see people traveling everywhere, and it's beautiful, I think it's so important for Mongolians to see their country, for Mongolians to take their children, and now last summer, traveling throughout Mongolia, actually some of the trips we did together, and seeing people everywhere and families traveling everywhere and letting the kids know the places, the culture, the history. We know that some city kids here don't really, getting far away from Mongolian culture, and seeing people going out to the countries is really heartwarming. I love it. I love it.
Yes, coming to this point, you see, lots of people were traveling. I mean, from the city mainly, but they were traveling from different province to another province, mainly. So it seems only within a small period of time. So let's say June, July, August.
usually after
So
Nadam,
usually
right?
is there's summertime traveling is quite a thing nowadays. Well, when did you notice actually these Mongolians traveling within a country so much like that in last year?
Last year was crazy because the borders were closed and people couldn't go. And I think that it's not that all these people would have anyway gone abroad. I think not all of them would have gone abroad, but there was a sense that with the COVID and everything, you just have to go out, and just everybody went out. It was beautiful. It was great. Some places we've seen a bit of overpacked, we could say, but just the how enthusiastic they were about seeing the country, traveling the country. That was amazing. That was beautiful. But I guess it's something of the last 6-7 years that you see more and more of them going out. But especially the last 2-3 years, you could see even people going up in Altai Tavanbog, quite a lot of locals up in the Dachat Valley and the reindeer people. You could see people traveling there. People wouldn't have gone all that way 10-15 years ago. So yeah.
Yes, I would say the people start earning more and more in each years actually, and also is related the infrastructure, the roads being built far west and north to south, and allowed people to travel, with their vehicle more and more.
But it also becomes a trend.
Exactly.
We talked about trend before, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Your friend went and he said, it was pretty easy. We packed some food. We packed a tent and we went, and it was beautiful and it wasn't cold and stuff. And then before you know it, all his neighbors are jumping into the Prius and driving as well. So
exactly. Now we're moving on to the next question, which is this the management of destination. So once you've chosen destination, you go there. So your friend told you, for example, Ugi Lake was the most beautiful lake, and it was so nice. We don't have this kind of beach. It's like a beach, and we were swimming and had fun for 3 days. And once you're there, then thousands of people next to you. So how do we manage this? Can we manage it with the seasonally, especially more with the national protected areas, like if you go more northeast, the birds want to see the birds, and can we stop people traveling within the birds laying eggs in this period of time? Can it be managed?
First of all, it must be managed, and it's okay that it's still not managed. This is part of a process, Again, until recently, Mongolia had to deal only with 100,000 foreigners that came here. Very few of them went farther than Khachorin or Terelj or the things in the area. So it comes together with more travelers, and whether it's domestic travelers or foreign travelers. So I'm sure it will get there. But maybe, for example, you take Ugi Lake. You said, sorry, you can't camp next to the lake. You can come here. There's a trail to walk. There's where you can walk. You can see the birds. Here you cannot enter. You put some kind of a fence, or you put a trail. As they do in China, in Japan, in Korea, they're putting this wooden plank trail, and then you can walk only on the trail.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to get off it. So then there wouldn't be any problem with the birds, with nesting and everything. So you can camp at certain distance from the lake, also to keep the water clean. There is no trash being thrown to the water. Sometimes unintentionally, you leave your bottle of Coke and it's going with the wind, or a plastic bag. So management will come. It's a matter of, I guess this year they've seen in some places around Mongolia that they became maybe a bit more dirty, and they would have to find a solution. I trust the Mongolian authorities to come up with a good solution, but definitely need to manage it.
Yeah, I guess the different regions need a different little bit of different tactics, or otherwise, because more you travel north, it's more of woods, more wood, and maybe it's because of defrost region and lots of water. We have slightly different ideas, slightly different managing there than down to the south. The south in the Gobi, so there's lots of sand dunes and there's rocky deserts, and so I see the projects in Bainzak, in the Flaming Cliffs, and the locals had this community together as NGO, and they're working together, and they've been implementing excellent project, I would say.
Right.
And they built this information center, and they had fenced all around the Bainzak, the Flaming Cliffs area, and the cars could not go anywhere, only one certain areas, because the Bainzak, the Flaming Cliffs is just open space, but they managed to put the small fences around. But the animals can cross, but the cars cannot go, and only we park in a certain area, and you walk through inside the canyon. Yeah, they just did a little bit of fixing the walkways, and they even had some interesting the scientific names and displays there. It's just excellent work. So I mean, it's just working so well. So maybe this kind of project we needed and elsewhere, especially the Tavanbogs area. So it's been full of people there all summer.
Yeah, but we've seen different places. But what every IMAG has a tourism person, right? Until now, they're mainly busy about marketing and bringing people in. And now maybe they just need to change a bit the priorities.
Yes.
Not worry, because you remember them, and in the tourism exhibition, they're trying to promote their destinations, which is fine. But maybe now they need to say, okay, we're starting to have some people. Let's see how we keeping the nature, how we making sure everything is clean, how we managing trash and stuff. So and even on the song level, there is somebody, some tourism person. So they just need, and it will come with the time. I'm not concerned. This is part of the process. I look at Israel. 30, 40 years ago, people weren't very aware. People picked flowers. People maybe threw trash. But people learn. There were some campaigns arranged by the government, and I think it would fix itself.
Well, it's if it was, the national park areas, if it was, everything's clear. So nowadays everyone is driving into it, and there's every destination has good sightseeing and the places. So we just, as Mongolians, because I think we are just driving all the way, coming from UB and drive in, stay there, arrive there and drive back.
Right.
So I think because there's a lack of information,
right,
and if we actually build the walkways, pathways to that, and the parking region, and the whole complex of management there, then the people don't have to drive in the spots.
Right.
Then they had to walk a little bit, and they could spend the whole day, go around one place to another without driving, having a good time. So I think this is quite a lot of the lack of information we have nowadays. That's why the Mongolians when we are traveling, so we just, just over flooding, just get there and take the selfie, then go back. So it's happening at the moment. So if we develop a little more, to giving them idea of, what to do there and how long will it take there and what are the activities. So can you do this or not? So this whole thing needed to be, improved. Actually,
Right.
this is where the governments or the travel companies, they need to focus on. This is my idea.
Right. I think Bogdul right here out of
you
the
go.
city is a great example. There are trails starting to be made. People know from where to go, how long it's gonna take. So Bogdul, I think, is a good example of how things are developing. On the other hand, we can copy from Korea, where every trail, has a signs. It says, the trail is marked with red dots, and somebody goes and mark it, with a bit of a spray, and they tell you it's going to take 3 hours, and it's easy, medium, or difficult.
Like different colors, yeah.
And they even have gates that they lock, so you cannot start if it's too late. And they think that you won't be able to make it to the out of the trail. They won't let you go in. So they're managing, and it's not very complicated. But again, I think it's part of a process. I think that travel in Mongolia is overall somewhat of a new industry, and domestic travel even newer, as we talked. So this would come as long as people have it in their mind, and as long as people want to travel and want to develop it, it will happen.
Sure. Well, the very last question. So, do you think the Mongolia, in the future, is going to be, the top destinations all over the world?
There's a lot of things that should happen in order for Mongolia to be, top destination. I told you, first of all, I'm not very much worried about it. I think that this competition is. First of all, there are some competitions you can't win in life, right?
Yeah.
China can put whatever money you would put into promoting Mongolia. The Chinese would put 100 times more. The Russians, but to Mongolia there are very few flights coming in. Flights are relatively expensive. Traveling within the country is expensive. Also, traveling in the country is not very convenient. In a country where the infrastructure is and the roads and the hotels are of a better quality. If I would be an older person, and I think most of the travelers that coming here to Mongolia are a bit of older people, they need to be of a certain character to travel here. Because when you're 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, and we have a lot of travelers of these ages here in Mongolia, maybe some of them would prefer a 5-star hotel over a gear camp, just to have a shower and toilet and a swimming pool.
Yes, privacy.
So you're losing in the competition no matter what. You can't build here now a network of at least until you don't have the winter tourism developed and stuff. So I'm not worried about the title of top destination. I say, and this is what I say for the last 20 years, Mongolia is the best destination for those that Mongolia really fits to what they expect. That come here if you're up to traveling through a rough country where the food sometimes is excellent, sometimes not so much, where the car is excellent but sometimes not so much, where the road is excellent but sometimes not so much. So it's the right country for the right people. It's not a country for everybody, and I think it's fine. As I told you,
I like that. Yes.
I don't think that we would want here 60 million tourists a year. I wouldn't, So I think that the travel industry should grow within the capacity of what the country can accommodate, and we should bring here the right kind of people.
Okay, thank you, Ron. So we've been talking about this destination, very interesting topic and very interesting stories and ideas and, the management thing, Thank you very much. And when you choose your destination, whether in Mongolia or all around the world, please respect the country, respect people and nature, and follow the rules and leave it as beautiful as it is. So this is all we can say. And the next travel podcast, we will discuss about food and beverages.
Wow.
And it would be a very interesting topic. And I'm sure we will have some interesting arguments about the food and beverages about Mongolia all over the world. And please stay with us, and thank you. This is Tulga. It's been with here.
Thank you, Tulga, for having me. It's been a pleasure.